Hi everyone, I'm Tekwin and I'm going to tell you the story of people and elephants in the rainforests of Peninsular Malaysia. Now, my story begins about 1.3 million years ago. And at that time, there were several species of elephant and early people living in this region. Now, no one knows exactly what happened, but for one reason or another, all of the early elephants and the early people went extinct, leaving today only the Asian elephants and the anatomically modern humans who arrived about 50,000 years ago behind. Now, my story is how these two species, our two species, managed to actually coexist. How this species, the Asian elephant, managed to somehow escape extinction when it seems that all of the other early elephants and many other large mammals were killed off by the arrival of the modern humans that had this sophisticated hunting technology, including bows and arrows and with these poison tips. Now, it seems that part of the story was the advance of the rainforest, meaning that originally when the first anatomically modern humans arrived, this region was more open, a kind of like savanna environment and suitable for hunting with bows and arrows. But as the rainforest kind of got more closed, more dense, there's more vegetation and not so easy to hunt with bows and arrows. And so instead, they turned to this piece of technology, which is a smaller form of an arrow. It's a tiny little dart, but they would also tip the end in poison. This one's not poison, and insert it into the end of a blowpipe, something like this one. And then shoot it up the end. Now, the advantage of the blowpipe was that it could be used for hunting smaller mammals in trees, such as squirrels, monkeys, birds. And that had another advantage in that by being able to access this kind of arboreal protein, the humans of the rainforest, the hunter-gatherers known as the Batek, type of Orang Asli in Malaysia, they, interestingly enough, have a taboo against hunting these large mammals on the ground, such as deer, pigs, and cows. And that allows them to live in the same landscape with tigers. So leaving the large prey on the forest floor for tigers and humans focusing on things that species of prey that are kind of inaccessible for tigers. And similarly, when it came to carbohydrates, humans had to contend with living in the same forests as these other large herbivores. And the elephants would focus on eating fruit, leaves, palms, whereas people could exploit the resources from tubers underground. They would dig up the tubers. And tubers, some of them were actually poisonous to elephants and to people, but people had the technology to process them, leach out the poisons and cook them. And that meant that people and elephants could actually live in the same place. But one area of particular potential for conflict between people and elephants was during the fruiting season. So during the fruiting season, both people and elephants would go after these large fruits known as durian, which are very rich in calories and therefore very attractive. Now, the solution that it seems that these hunter-gatherers in the rainforest adopted was to build these elevated platforms. Now, this illustration is from colonial times, and this photograph is from the peninsula about 100 years ago. I've added roughly to scale the elephants, and you can see that these raised platforms were really just out of reach of the elephants. And so they functioned quite effectively as retreats. So when the fruit fell, people could run down a ladder, grab the durian, get back up in time, hopefully, to avoid the elephants who were also going after the durian. Now, things started, this was kind of the situation in the rainforest for many tens of thousands of years, until about 5,000 years ago, when agriculture arrived, and then people started to plant crops. And crops caused increase in conflict with elephants, because a lot of the crops planted were things that were attractive to elephants, such as rice, which is a grass, and also because it's rich in carbohydrates, it's also attractive to elephants. So elephants would come out of the forest at night to raid the fields. And in response, some of the early agriculturalists came up with these traps. These traps that they actually used to kill elephants. They would be spear traps that came from the side, spear traps that were triggered by a tripwire and dropped from above, and also pit traps. And they would often put spikes at the bottom of the pits. And these agriculturalists would often then actually kill and eat the elephants. And well, some of the hunter-gatherers also occasionally, the early hunter-gatherers, tried their hand at growing crops, and they still do today. Occasionally they will try and grow crops, but it almost invariably ends in problems when these elephants arrive. And that leads to a story which, this is a story that's told throughout the peninsula by many different groups in slightly different forms. But the basic gist of the story is that one day, this farmer, his name was Bongsu, he had problems with an elephant who had come and was raiding his banana crops. And so he set out these caltrops spikes in the field, and the following night, an elephant came and stepped on one of these spikes and ended up running off into the forest, wounded from the spike. And Bongsu actually gave chase. He wanted to put an end to the elephant. But after several days of trekking, he arrived in a strange land. Turned out to be the land of the elephants. But in this land, the elephants actually removed their cloaks, and underneath they were like humans. And so Bongsu, to cut a long story short, he actually he found that the elephant that was raiding his crops was a beautiful princess in the land of the elephants. And so he helped remove the spike from her foot. And with her father's blessings, the two of them ended up getting married. But Bongsu got homesick, and he decided to return to his own land, and he invited his new bride to accompany him. And she said, fine, I'll come along, but on one condition: you never feed me any bamboo shoots. And he said, bamboo shoots? No problem. So anyway, they went back home to his Bongsu's home, to the land of the humans. And, well, the upshot was that he ended up accidentally feeding her bamboo shoots, and she turned back into an elephant and ran off into the forest. But the moral of the story was that, well, from that time onwards, Bongsu and his descendants, they felt that it was absolutely wrong to set traps for elephants or to harm elephants. And they actually do respect elephants as, in a way, having human spirits. And they use that as a taboo for not hunting elephants and not eating elephant meat. And it's actually quite a common taboo among many of these hunter-gatherer communities, which has meant that that's one reason why They do not have conflict with elephants. And that's also another reason why they avoid planting crops to begin with. They understand the problems that planting crops can have. And yeah, so that's how some of these hunter-gatherer groups still to this day have avoided having serious conflicts with elephants. And I'll be happy to discuss this more in a short while.